I'm on. Can you hear me? Yep. All right. Yes. Boy, I haven't been in front of or in back of a pulpit in a long time. Shaking some of the rust off today, and you're all helping with your wonderful welcome from Kevin and the others, Kim, the others. And also realizing as I sat down that my former piano teacher, Maria, who gave me about 6 lessons 5 years ago before Meyer Music shut down the lesson program, and then she moved on to other things, was here too. So wonderful seeing you. I've been here several times before for various different things, district meetings and being here for pastors' meetings and things like this. I always liked this place. I like the new, well, it's not new anymore, but the new sanctuary. It's got a nice vibe to it. I like it. So, bit of a homecoming for my wife, who just got married last year, Jackie. She retired from being the music director at Temple Methodist 2 weeks ago. It's the first time we've had a chance to sit in the congregation together for regular worship since we've known each other, actually. And Jackie was the music director here when John Fisher, no relation, was here about 25 years ago. So it's sort of a homecoming for her too. So thank you all for your warm welcome and the opportunity to be here. So I'm just going to say to Kevin and the others, anything that I missed along the way with the procedures, please just give me a nudge or a whisper or a shout. Okay, you'll find me pretty cooperative, pretty easy. I pastored at Wolf Lake for 6 or 7 years. They're pretty informal out there, so I'm used to it. So, jumping into the sermon today, I'm going to jump off from a principle which I've come to believe is true. It's called the law of universality. The law of universality says that if one person is experiencing something, you can count on somebody else experiencing that same thing or something similar to it. So, I've been experiencing a lot of discouragement and sadness and frustration and anxiety and outrage and fear lately, partly due to events in my private life, but that's another issue. Much of it due to events in public life. It's an election year. Have you noticed? Okay. Politics. I have nothing against politics. We need politics. We need order. We need to choose leaders. Politics in and of themselves are like feelings. They're neither good nor bad. They're just there. But with the wars in Ukraine and Russia, the Middle East, other places, the presidential campaigns, and the poisonous, vitriolic rhetoric and conspiracy theories that get expressed. Sometimes I find myself, when I see a campaign sign, I feel my muscles getting tense and my breathing getting constricted and a little bit of a knot in my stomach. And I realize that's the same way I feel when I'm in the chair at the dentist's office. So based on the principle of universality, I'm expecting that at least one other person here is experiencing this or something like it. Is there one person here at least? Oh, thank you. There's 2 of you. No. Many of us apparently, okay? So thank God that Jesus lived in our world, our real world, and not in some pie-in-the-sky place. He was here with us and dealt with polluted politics in his time, just like we do here today. So today, we think that Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives have bad blood. Nothing compared to the Jews and the Samaritans that are referred to in this morning's gospel lesson, okay? Their bad blood went back at least 600 years. It started when Israel, the Jewish people, allied themselves with a certain political power that got defeated by the Babylonians, the Babylonian Empire. Babylon sweeps into Jerusalem and the surroundings of Israel and carts the survivors off, deports them to Babylon, hundreds of miles away, for good. Okay? The Babylonians left some people north of Jerusalem in a place called Samaria to stay, allowed them to stay, and then brought, like many imperial places, countries, they brought in foreigners to settle and intermix and intermarriage with the Samaritans and to kind of make it their own territory. Unexpectedly, another empire wipes out Babylon, and they allow the Jewish people to come back to Jerusalem in that area that they started from. 70 years later, they come back. They come back and find out that the Samaritans didn't have to be deported any place. And they also find out that they've intermarried and gotten all these different cultural and religious differences now that have accrued because of all the intermarriage. So the Jewish people come back and see the Samaritans as religious mongrels. Okay? And the Samaritans were happy to return the favor. All right? So you have these people who are living near each other but hating each other. All kinds of prejudice, okay? So you talk about polluted politics, okay? Nasty stuff. So Jesus, in our gospel today, feels the call to go to Jerusalem for his final trip there. And unfortunately, traveling from his home in Galilee, he had to pass through these polluted waters of Samaria to get to Jerusalem. Okay, so that's what's happening in the story today. All right. So he and his disciples are going through Samaria. He sends some of his guys ahead to make arrangements for some meals and some lodging, and things start to happen. So I think there are three main dynamics happening in this story. Three dynamics. Dynamic one happens when the Samaritans refuse to offer any food or shelter to Jesus and his friends. In other words, the Samaritans are so tied to the old political labels and the old animosities that when they find out they're going to Jerusalem, meaning they're Jews, they say, no, you're not welcome here. So the disciples, understandably, are insulted and upset by this. They go back to tell Jesus what happened. We can imagine on the way, they're getting pretty fired up. Those darn Samaritans, they're at it again. Once a Samaritan, always a Samaritan, right? They get back to Jesus, they're worked up, and James and John even say, they're so mad, they say, God, Jesus, can we call down lightning from heaven on them? And so, when the Samaritans labeled the Jews as Jews, they saw them as objects. We know that when we label people, we turn them into objects and into things. Instead of a you and a me, to become its, I-T-S, to become its. All right? So, dynamic one has to do with the Samaritans' rejection of Jesus and his disciples, okay? Dynamic two also appears when the disciples say, can we rain down fire from heaven on them, right? Dynamic two is our instinct to instantly turn and label people who label us. Instantly reject people who we feel are rejecting us. Okay? Those stinking Samaritans, they're still at it. They'll never change. They're all alike. Now, there are three advantages to using dynamic one and dynamic two, to turning people into objects and into things. First, it's fun and it's easy. It feels so good to feel so right. If we are really feeling right, we can just feel the energy surge through us. Feeling righteous indignation is a powerful thing. It's fun and easy. Second advantage, when you label people, you don't have to do any work. You don't have to pay attention to them. You don't have to try to understand them. You don't have to listen to what they say or really see who they are, really respect them. Okay? You're off the hook. A third advantage of labeling people like this and turning them into things and Samaritans is that when we find other people who feel the same way we do, and we all get fired up together, it can be intoxicating. It can be a mystical experience. It can be a religious experience. Look at some of the campaign rallies. It's not just about, yay, we love our guy. We're also saying, and we hate all these other wrongdoers that these useless people, the bad people, labeling all the time. So it's fun, easy, and intoxicating to label people. Okay? As was said in the children's sermon, it takes effort, it takes work to love people. Now, I'm of the belief that we all do this, labeling. Life always brings us across people who we just can't stand. Maybe it's political, maybe it's about how they look, maybe it's about their gender, maybe it's about how they smell, whatever it might be. Life has a way of bringing those people across our paths, and we are all susceptible to that, to those dynamics. So my question to you today is, first, who's your Samaritan? If there isn't one today, you can count on it. Somebody's going to cross your path soon who you're just going to want to pinch. There's a third dynamic in the gospel. James and John say, can we incinerate them, please? Please, God, please. Jesus turned and scolded them for suggesting it. Another ancient version of this passage says, Jesus told them, you don't know what spirit you're of. For the Son of Man did not come to kill people, but to save people. And then, as the story says, Jesus moved on. Apparently, he didn't think it was worth it to go back to the Samaritans and show how wrong they were or whatever like that. He probably thought it was a big waste of time to do all that. Some people are just not going to listen, right? So on he goes toward Jerusalem. Okay? But dynamic 3, this Jesus dynamic, is about finding a way through the midst of this poison politics that we're in, where the hatred is so intense, a middle way. Somehow he refrained from seeing the Samaritans as labels, as nasty, evil, worthless people. Somehow he could still see them as persons. Now, obviously, I'm taking the position that the dynamics 1 and 2 of labeling are out of line with the Jesus dynamic. But how can we act out the Jesus dynamic in our world today, in our country, especially in an election year? If we tried to do it, what would we do? How would we act? Now, there's no recipe. Many different ways of acting this out, depending on our personal circumstances, our talents, our gifts, the people that we run into, etc. Okay? But I think there's a clue with the Samaritans here. In a different gospel, the Gospel of John, it's a story that's often called the woman at the well. Okay? Anybody ever hear that? Okay. So in that story, Jesus and his disciples are traveling. Maybe it's the same trip that they were on in our gospel lesson this morning. But Jesus arrives first in this village of Samaria, and his disciples are shocked to find him there, sitting at the well, having a give and take conversation with a Samaritan. And what is he? This is a Samaritan. You don't talk to these people unless you have to. And you're having a conversation, getting to know this person. And not only that, she was a woman. I mean, not only a Samaritan, but I mean, a lot of rungs down the ladder from there. What was he doing? How did he do that? His disciples didn't have a clue why he would do it. Okay? Now, some people would say, well, he did it because he could do those kinds of things, that he was the Son of God. Yeah, okay, fine. To me, that's a cop-out, because he was also the Son of Man. He was also human. Okay? And he also challenged us to behave like him. Okay? So to say, well, it's because he could do that, because he was the Son of God. No. Okay, fine, except maybe we are too. Like Jesus said, he was the light of the world. Jesus also said, we're the light of the world. Yeah, check it out. Matthew 5, all right? So, how to put this into effect would take a whole series of sermons. So talk to Robert about that. We don't have time today. But this person-to-person approach, what I find is when I go shopping, I usually make a point to say something kind to the cashier. I was a cashier once. I couldn't hack it. I was a terrible cashier. And they deal with some nasty people sometimes. I try to say something kind to them, okay? If I see somebody and I'm parked next to the parking lot and I see a bumper sticker that makes me wince because they don't think the same way I do, and they're right there, I'll typically say hello to them. And they'll typically say hello back and be very nice, okay? I'm not saying it's the only way to go about, but it's something we can all do. We can do a person-to-person kind of a thing. You never know what a kind word might do in that person's life at that moment, whether they're a Samaritan or not. All right? Person to person. As I said, I guarantee that you're going to come across people real soon who you do not like, or whose positions about things you do not like. It might be their politics, their appearance, all that kind of stuff. But ask yourself, what am I going to do if I pay attention to myself enough to be aware that I'm doing this judgment kind of a thing, and I want to slip into the labeling thing? What am I going to do if I don't fall into dynamic 1 or dynamic 2? The Jew-Samaritan thing. How can I put dynamic 3 into gear? That gets into what Jesus called loving your enemies, and loving your enemies is an advanced spiritual practice. Okay? It takes a lot of patience and a lot of work. It's hard, but that's the Jesus dynamic. Okay? So, as has been said here before this morning, the support and the encouragement that we get from each other is not just nice, it's a necessity. We need other people to love like this. We cannot do this like a spark away from the fire. We need the community of people. And Jesus has also given us this wonderful sacrament here this morning, a way of nourishing ourselves, becoming one with him in a physical way and also in a spiritual way through Holy Communion. So as we do this morning, let's let God connect us, God bind us together. Let's see if we can let go of labels. This is a sacrament for people without labels. Right? This is a sacrament for everybody with any bumper sticker on their car. Okay? Let's pray for a moment, okay?